Gregtech is a mod that takes the concept of mining and crafting and pushes it to such extremes that only the most divergent of Neros could ever enjoy. And my favorite Gregtech pack is Monifactory, but that's on a stinky old version of Minecraft. Monifactory, on the other hand, is a new reimagining of it in a stinky new version of Minecraft, and I love that new Minecraft stank. So here's the question: can I survive 100 days before going insane? Our adventure starts like all others, spawning in an abandoned city, annihilated by some long-forgotten apocalypse, looting chest after chest in desperate attempt to... Well, okay, it's not like any other Minecraft playthrough, but it's how real gamers play Minecraft. And as real gamers, we're looking for a few sweet treats, like a backpack, and various ingots such as steel, tin, vibrant alloy, and silver. We'll even manage to find some batteries, which is huge. They're going to help us with power storage, being that they're batteries. Since the buildings we're looting are so close to each other, it's really easy to hop from place to place and spend the entire day looting them, as getting a small supply of steel and wrought iron as well is going to be stupidly helpful early on. The iron requirements in Gregtech are astronomical, so anything we can get for free, we're going to take. It will be a long time before we can farm iron. We're also looting a lot of the Moni currency, which we can use to buy ores and spawn eggs if we need. This is going to be super useful later when we're looking for rarer resources or are just feeling lazy. And after less than a day of looting around, we can even upgrade our backpack using some lead and bronze to have even more loot goblin slots, and bigger is always better. Although at some point we need to stop looting, though we do spend the rest of day 0. But come the dawn of day 1, it's time to set down a base, and the quest book is so kind to us as to provide with a number of diamond-tiered Gregtech tools, like this axe that chops trees entirely. Surely, if the game has so much quality of life early on, then this pack should be easy. I chop some trees and prep a base area for us that mostly is just a series of organized chests. You make and hoard so many items, and until we get applied energistics, we'll need loads of space, and we're going to want it neat. And a house isn't a home without a furnace, especially because we're going to need to be smelting thousands of metals just to enter the first tech tier. So I gather up a few and begin to upgrade them with iron, copper, silver, and gold to make them smelt things much faster. We need to be on top of our metals. Our first official quest is to make a set of crafting tools, but right now I think we should focus on bulking up some resources and getting our furnaces to diamond tier. And mining is much more convenient in this pack, as we can set warp points across the world to expedite all that walking around stuff you normally have to do, which is great because mining is also completely inconvenient in this pack. Ores don't just spawn in blobs underground because Gregtech simulates massive veins of ores that have tons of spawning rules, making mining an absolute pain. Except it is convenient. I tricked you a third time. The quest book comes in clutch again as we get ourselves a special tool. The prospecting tool tells us exactly what ores lie beneath us in just a few chunks radius, and it's, exactly what we need. That, combined with the free mining hammers you get early on, makes it really easy for me to locate and mine tons of diamonds, coal, and graphite ore. I really only care about the diamond and coal ore, but all ores tend to spawn in clusters of 3 or more, so there's always going to be a byproduct. And don't worry, I managed to kill myself nearly immediately too, so get that out of the way. I mine for most of the day, and when I return, I need to smelt raw diamonds and coal. Yeah, that's right. In Gregtech, you don't just get the resources from the ore, it has to be smelted from a raw form, even coal. And the next few days are spent mining for copper, iron, gold, silver, tin, and redstone while making sure to upgrade our furnaces. I know this looks like a lot of resources, but we're going to be running out of these in less than 10 days. And I die again, just for good measure. By day 5, I have enough resources to feel comfortable actually beginning the Gregification of this pristine and unscarred world. So if you're ready to watch me waste over 30 hours of my life playing block game but harder, please consider subscribing to make it feel just a little bit more worth it. To start, we need the crafting tools, like a hammer for plates, a wrench for complex shapes, files for rods, and etc., finishing with a mortar and pestle to grind things into dusts, which will be essential for alloying metals early on. And trust me when I say, manually crafting bits in this mod is a pain. I don't know if you've ever tried to powder pure iron by hand, but it's not easy. So of course, our goal is to get our hands on machines to do it for us as fast as possible. Low voltage technology is our mission, as it's the first tech tier, and for it we'll need power generation and circuitry, so time to speedrun thousands of years of human technological advancement. Oh, and quick note, because us Gregtech players need as much brain space as possible for crafting chains, calling it low voltage is hard for us, so it's abbreviated to LV. In fact, all tech tiers are referred to in acronym form, so MV is medium voltage, HV is high voltage, and so on. Don't be confused when I use my small words. We'll eventually need some resin, so I use our Moni currency to buy rubber tree saplings and get those planted down to grow in the background while we work on other things. Charcoal will also be extremely important for smelting and crafting steel, so I force some baby saplings to grow into trees just to be immediately cut down and incinerated for material gain. We can make an alloy required for circuits and power generation by grinding down copper ingots into dust and combining them with 4 redstone each to produce red alloy. While that smelts into ingots, I also make conductive iron, an essential wiring alloy by powdering iron and mixing it with equal parts redstone and setting that to smelt as well. When the red alloy is done smelting, we want to process that into plates, and unfortunately, with no machines, it costs 2 ingots to form 1 single plate. It's a horrible ratio, makes me cringe, but it is a necessary evil. Half of the plates I'll snip into wires with our wire cutters, and the other half I keep for crafting. The rubber trees are also grown by now, so I can chop them for their resin, and using 2 resin and the hammer, we can make rubber sheets. Again, we'll want to improve that a lot. We're about ready to head for our first source of power, the steam dynamo. We can easily craft a water collector block that slowly collects water from the atmosphere, and that we'll use to fuel the dynamo. The dynamo itself is a smattering of micro parts to make. Sheets, rods, coils, gears, and even furnaces are required to synthesize our first glorious piece of technology. But water isn't enough to run it. We need burnables, of course, and for that, we're going to use sugarcane. This pack has snad. Not sand, but snad. It's special sand. It's very easy to craft. You just need to condense down a bunch of sand, and you get snad. If you plant sugarcane or cactus on snad and quickly power it on and off with redstone, it'll make it grow super fast. So it's really easy to make a very efficient sugarcane farm for power. We can even make a special redstone clock and vacuum chest to power and collect the sugarcane too. The redstone clock is very cheap to craft, but the vacuum chest takes a rotor which is miserable to craft by hand, and we'll be stuck doing that dance until at least the medium voltage tech tier. So they better lock in. By assembling a simple system with the clock pulsing the sand and some pistons, we're nearly ready to spill sugarcane all over the world. But I do want to filter the vacuum chest to only grab our sugarcane and not my other items, and for that we're going to need a hopper, which is, as you guessed it, more annoying to craft, as it needs plates and gears and some tools to assemble. But the filtering is worth it, and the hoppers are going to help us out with the farm too. Oh, and for your viewing pleasure and my mental state, the pistons are, muted, so no all day in your ears. The canes go into a drawer with a void upgrade so that it won't overflow, and that gets hoppered right into our steam dynamo, which whirs to life and gets cooking some tasty FE power. We can also use sugarcane for smelting, and for that I'll have a drawer auto-pushing into a double chest that's connected to our special furnaces. The special furnaces can move items in and out of them automatically, so it's really easy to make a quick smelting setup. Now that we have power, we need things that use power, and those need circuits, and circuits need glass, so I need more sand. Ah yes, the ASMR of sand collection. Sand turns into glass, which turns into glass panes, which I can somehow shape by hand into glass tubes that are going to be very important later. For now, we need loads of copper wire and steel bolts. Steel is simple to make, just grind down wrought iron and charcoal, then mix it together and smelt it. While that smelts, we can cut loads of copper plates into wires and thin out some copper plates to make copper foil, which gets cut into spools of fine wire that we can just glue to a board of wood to make a functioning circuit board. It works for me. The fine copper wires also get used alongside resin, paper, and powdered charcoal to make the first of the resistors we need. And ding! Honey, the steel is done. That gets filed into rods and then sawed into bolts, which we can use with those hand-shaped glass tubes to make vacuum tubes. And with a touch of steel and some red alloy wire, we can synthesize the first of the LV circuits. We have just 5 of them, but each machine they craft will make the next set of circuits even easier to make. It's time to get technical. After doing a quick questbook thing for Laser IO. Okay, now we get technical. We might have FE power generation, but Gregtech is special and uses its own power unit, EU. The first thing we'll need to spend our circuits on is a block to convert FE to EU, a low voltage converter. There's an entire special system for Gregtech power, but I'm going to keep it simple. FE can be converted to EU at a 4:1 ratio, and the tier of the converter block determines the tier of the EU power. So LV converters make LV power, MV converters make MV power, and so on. Machines want their own tier of power, so LV machines want LV power, MV machines want MV power, etc., etc. And then there's amps, and all you need to know about that is that 1 amp generally powers 1 machine. If you want to learn more, Don't. Save yourself from Gregtech. The machine hull for LV machines isn't too bad to make for us. It is steel costly, but the wrought iron and tin wires aren't bad for us. The converter I want, however, uses a bunch of red alloy wire that we don't have, so it's back to smelting, grinding, smashing, and cutting to make enough wiring. But after that, on just day 8, we're producing EU power units. I can't do anything with them yet, though, and we're not going to for a second. Remember those batteries we found earlier? I want to use them. To do what? Store power. Were you paying attention? Good. I make a battery buffer block that can hold and charge the batteries and release the power automatically when machines need it. To supply that power, we'll use the conductive iron wires that we made earlier, as they're the LV superconductors, and that means they're good. Just trust me on that one. Power gen, power storage, power transfer, we are so back. And now I want a wire mill and a bender very badly. They'll have the cost of making plates and wires, which will slash our circuit crafting cost by a stupid amount. But both of these machines need some more precise parts than just sheets, like motors and pistons. So the first machine we're actually making is a polarizer, because motors are the basis for everything, and motors need magnetic rods, and the polarizer makes magnetic rods for free. Also, the polarizer doesn't cost any circuitry, so it's also basically free. With the ability to magnetize our rods, we can now make a quick batch of LV electrical motors, and 4 of those with 2 circuits and a machine hole nets us a wire mill. Finally, 1 ingot can be milled into 2 wires, and it's automatic. We can even use some machine covers we looted earlier to make an item moving system, so that we can toss loads of items into the barrel above the machine, and it'll spit the processed parts into the barrel below. If you're smart and you're playing Gregtech, you'll process more than 1 stack at a time, which is why I forget to do this in about 5 days. Next up is the bender, which needs some pistons, an upgrade of the motors, but since we've done so well resource prepping, I can immediately make the required parts for a pneumatic press YouTube channel content farm that makes 1 plate from 1 ingot. Suddenly, most of our micro parts have just become 100% cheaper, which is great because we're out of circuits, and it feels a lot better crafting them like this, especially since the list of machines that we need has just gotten really, really long. We just completed Chapter 0. This is Chapter 1. The next lovely lad on the line is the lathe, who can process 1 ingot into 2 rods at a time, rounding out our base parts completely, which is great since iron rods are a big cost in motors, and we need to save as much iron as possible because I just ran out of it, so the rest of day 10 is spent mining iron and redstone because I also ran out of redstone. I told you we'd run out. But, ooh, does the feeling of smelting a big batch of ores not just feel great with our smelter setup? With ingots back on the menu, we can get right back into it. I want a compressor, since it'll reduce the cost of rubber sheets, and an alloy smelter to unlock new alloys completely and make processing the old ones automatic. Instead of all that, though, my machines start to run out of power. Still, I make the alloy smelter and try to jam it into the power line because, you know, I'm in play stupid games and the power company shuts off your access until you pay them, but maybe I can foot the bill a bit longer? No. We're completely out of power. Alright, well, let's investigate the source here, the dynamo. A steam dynamo is great, but what would be better is a steam turbine. They're very different, I'm sure. We can turn our dynamo into a boiler that can fuel up to 2 turbines, which will make us more FE to convert into EU, and if you think that's complicated, don't worry, it doesn't get any simpler than this. It is a bit mind-numbing to have to go back to crafting by hand after the taste of machines, but again, necessary evil. I futz with the fluid pipes I'm going to eventually use, but I settle on steel pipes in the end, and after crafting the new steam boiler and turbine, we're already making loads more power than before. But we can, of course, use a second turbine as long as we have some way of moving FE power around, because, of course, EU wires don't work for FE. So I'm going to use Ender IO conduits made from conductive iron to have a cheap and easy way to toss around our FE. Now we can hook up 2 fully functioning steam turbines into our power system, which unlocks a new problem for us. Our battery buffer is kind of empty. It only has 1 battery in it, and the more batteries it has, the more amps it can put out. But batteries need battery casings, and those need antimony metal, so I have to take a trip to locate a vein of highly toxic stibnite ore. Processing the stibnite nets us antimony, and that can be alloyed with lead for FDA-approved snacks, I mean battery casing plates, that we can then shape into proper battery casings and fill with some lithium that I just buy with the Moni coins because lithium can only be found in the end dimension for some reason. And now we're ready to, no, wait, hold on, I have to upgrade our wires to make sure they can handle the increased amperage. And now we can go ahead and make some more machines. Like that compressor that I mentioned earlier and then had to put off. And after that, a big boy, the big boy, the assembler. a key machine in Gregtech and the gateway to future technology, and also extremely expensive. Expensive enough that I feel an urge to make a stack of LV motors just to hold us over. But with all of our current machines, each of the pieces is made nice and cheap and automagically without tool durability or complaint. And we can even upgrade the motors into pistons and pistons into robot arms, and robot arms make the assembler. Oh, the things this can craft. But for now, it's going to make all of our circuit parts like the resistors, vacuum tubes, and the circuit boards a lot cheaper. Well, not really, it can't do it on its own, which is a problem because we just ran out of circuits, and to unlock the full potential of LV circuit crafting for us, we'll need a centrifuge and an extractor machine. So it's time to bash my head against a crafting table for a bit and somehow create raw circuitry from it. And that we can just jam inside of a box to make a centrifuge, which is just a big ol' spinning boy. The centrifuge can process resin into glue, which will be used to make cheaper circuit boards and resistors in the assembler. The extractor is a lot more of a pain, as it needs pumps, which are just a barrel of monkeys to craft. Just so fun. It's a dream. I love crafting pumps, baby! But as fun as they are to craft, they're terribly useful, so I do make enough of them to create both an extractor and a solidifier machine. The extractor can melt things into fluids, and the solidifier can turn fluids into solids, and together they can make things like rotors a lot cheaper. We're still not at maximum circuit crafting potential though. For that, we'll want an arc furnace and electrolyzer. Arc furnaces can make annealed copper, which is better for some reason, but they require oxygen gas to run, and electrolyzers can gather that oxygen for us. It is a match made in heaven. To get the oxygen, we can smash glass into dust, spin it down into silicon dioxide, and then electrolyze that for oxygen and silicon. But how to move the oxygen to the arc furnace? Buckets, I guess. Anyway, we can run copper through it to get annealed copper, which gets milled into various wires for circuit parts. Our extractor has been melting down some red alloy on the background, but that we shouldn't move with buckets. So I can form some steel cells, a neat way to move up to 8 buckets of fluid at once. I want to buffer up a stack of circuits since our next goal will be MV power, which will require lots of LV circuits. So day 16 is focused entirely on crafting circuit parts like vacuum tubes and resistors at super cheap rates. And speaking of MV power, we're also going to need some new metals to break into a better age of tech, and I'm tired of mining with basic diamond tools. I'd like an enchantment. So I spend the next 2 days running amok through the buildings surrounding us, looting books and an enchanting table to make a level 30 enchanting setup, and grinding through various enchantments and XP to get an efficiency 5, fortune 3, unbreaking 3 diamond mining hammer, which I immediately test out on pentalendite, a nickel ore, only to realize that fortune doesn't work on Gregtech ores, but at least the efficiency does. And that's nice because I've also just ran out of copper and have to spend the rest of day 18 gathering it. Anyways, let's get back to working on a stack of circuits. We'll need lots of rubber, so it's time to hit the old tree farm and get the resin processing into sheets. That will take a small bit, so I queue up the craft for a new alloy called cupronickel. Remember this, it will be important later. What's important now is that our rubber is done, and that means we finally get to hold our first stack of LV circuits. In my mind, we've just about conquered LV, so the next obvious step would be to progress to MV, right? Not around here, partner. Gregtech has tons of tech tiers, each more complicated than the last. The further you go, the more items you'll need to make and keep track of. So really, the best way to move towards medium voltage would be unlocking digital storage. I've been a good boy, and I want applied energistics. We will need the nefarious Certus quartz, which I learned doesn't spawn in the overworld, so unless I want to go for baking a nether cake, and I don't right now, I just buy the ore using Moni currency. We can smelt our ores into Certus quartz gems, but we need the dust, and they're too tough for a hand mortar, meaning we need a macerator machine. But what could be better than a macerator? 8 of them, jammed into a single multi-block. There's a few Steam Age multi-blocks in this pack that actually perform 8 recipes at once, including an alloy smelter as well, so it's time to take a quick detour into the Steam Age. We're about to be using a bunch of bricks, so I buy some clay and get it smelting. We'll also need an alloy called potent to make one of the multi-blocks, and thankfully I looted it earlier because it's a real pain to make. And of course, for the Steam Age, we'll need a stupid amount of bronze, which is going to take a while, so I guess we'll continue Project Cupronickel. These ingots need to be milled into 2x wires, and neat trick, the number on the crafting card in a wire mill determines the grade of wire that it makes, with 3 making the fine wire. But that's enough of cupronickel and tutorials for now. Just remember that we've done this. There will be a test. Our bronze is now ready to be shaped into casings, something our assembler is excellent at, but we can't use it for all the strange parts needed for our multi-blocks, and we do have to resort to handcrafting things. Ugh. We need a steam input, some firebox casings, and of course item inputs and outputs for the machine. And with a fresh alloy smelter and some bronze gears, we can form the controller of the alloy smelting multi-block. I love building Gregtech multi-blocks as they're super modular. You can choose wherever most of the parts go. And I choose to jam this guy underground. The behemoth smelter is a godsend, crafting 32 bronze at a time instead of just 4. That is speed. Real speed. And next up is the steam grinder for macerating our Certus quartz, and similar to its brother, I'd put it in the floor. With our big bronze brick boys, we can finally get back to what we were doing before, powdering crystals. And then we'll compress the Certus quartz dust into sheets to craft the AE charger, which can charge our Certus quartz crystals to make the very useful Fluix crystals. The purple gems get grounded up and compressed into sheets. Then we need electrical steel, an alloy of silicon and steel, which is made way faster in the new alloying machine. And with all of our quartz and steel prepared, we can make an energy acceptor, the first actual part of an ME storage system. And with a little more than red alloy, we can make our first storage parts as well. Ugh, just get a whiff of that new storage smell. We'll also need to create Fluix cables from Certus quartz and Fluix, and for a terminal, we need glowstone, which can be made easily in a mixer. The mixer is very simple to make, and to keep things even simpler, I just buy the ore that we need, tricalcium phosphate, which will mix with gold dust to produce glowstone. Using that to make our terminal means we have nearly everything that we need. All that's left is a disk drive, which first needs an ME chest. Uh-oh. Wait, that blue metal is aluminum. That's MV tech stuff. Whoops! Applied Energistics seems to be an MV tech thing. Okay, I guess you do need medium voltage first. And just to be clear, ME stands for matter energy, and that's the Applied Energistics storage system, and MV stands for medium voltage and is a Gregtech tier. So don't get confused, or I'll send Larry after you. Best get our hands on aluminum, which right now we can get through electrolyzing clay. It can't be smelted in a furnace though. No, it's not like other metals, it needs the electric blast furnace. Get used to hearing EBF from now on, as it's one of the most prevalent machines in the game. And remember that Cupernickel side project? Right? The one that I said there was going to be a test on? Well, here it is. EBFs require coils, and the first tier of them is Cupernickel. The wires we made earlier get combined with bronze foil and liquid tin alloy. And God, do I love lighting our factory up like this to craft something new. We're also going to need a set of Invar casings, which are made just the same as our bronze ones. It's, just out of Invar. EBFs are pretty expensive early on as they need loads of parts, and most notably right now is that our EBF needs power to run, so we need energy ports. And aluminum requires MV power to smelt, but we only have access to LV ports. Thankfully, you can actually tier skip with energy ports, as most multi-blocks will accept 2 of them. 2 of the same port combine their powers to push the machine 1 tier above. So 2 LV ports make 1 MV EBF. And after installing our Cupernickel coils, as well as our hatches and ports, we're almost ready to go. We do need to still perform maintenance on the EBF, and we're missing 2 of the tools needed, a soft mallet and a crowbar. They're weirdly annoying to craft, but once we have them, we can fix up our EBF and get it burning hot. Hot enough to smelt our aluminum dust into the first of the blue ingots. We have taken our first steps into MV, as well as bankruptcy, because the EBF annihilates our power supply, so I'll need to be careful about how often I use it. And although things are looking really cramped in the base, the grind simply cannot stop, so I force another multi-block into the mixture, a steam separator, a giant centrifuge, and we are really going to need it, because the next thing we're going after is gallium arsenide. It's a mixture of gallium and arsenic, and both of those dusts come from ore processing. Gallium comes from processing sphalerite, and arsenic comes from realgar, so we need to go mining again. Realgar is realgary difficult to find, but eventually we score a few pieces, and sphalerite only spawns in the nether. So I buy the ore instead of making that cake. I don't want to do the cake yet. The sphalerite gets ground into crushed ore and then washed in a cauldron, and then ground again to the pure dust, which we centrifuge to separate out trace amounts of gallium. The realgar is much nicer, as we just bang that into dusts and centrifuge it for guaranteed amounts of arsenic. The gallium and arsenic are then mixed into gallium arsenide inside of the mixer. And then the tasty gallium arsenide is separated into piles and then combined with liquid glass and fine copper wires to make the first diodes of the playthrough. We're much closer to MV circuits now, but the next step requires an entirely new multi-block, the pyrolyze oven. We need phenol to make the phenolic circuit boards, and it's not like the pyrolyze oven is actually that expensive, it's just like a cheaper EBF laying on its side, so I like it less. We're able to build it on the 25th day of the challenge, a whole fourth of the way through, and I'm still on LV. So I better pick up the pace, because I want to make plastic. We need coal to make phenol, so I had to go mining for it, but once we have it, we can combine it with steam, and that makes phenol. We'll also need a new machine, the chemical reactor, to make a phenolic circuit board, so a new LV machine hits the line. We can combine our Tier 1 resin boards with phenol to make the Tier 2 phenolic boards, and then make them printed boards by using silver wire. There's a cheaper method we could use, but I feel lazy right now, so we're just gonna make our first MV circuits. Only 2 of them, though. These 2 circuits are going to change the game. Right now, we need 3 LV circuits to craft 1 single MV circuit, and that sucks. But using 2 MV circuits, we can make the LV circuit assembler. But why does an LV machine cost MV circuits? That's because the circuit assemblers are they're the best machine in the game. They can craft circuits all the way up to high voltage circuitry, and they reduce the cost of our MV circuits by an incredible amount. 33% cheaper circuits is a steal, and later, combined with some more MV technology, we can get even cheaper LV and MV circuits. So they're a long-term investment as well. And finally, with aluminum and MV circuits, we can get back into applied energistics. It all comes full circle, baby. The endless cycle of industry. We'll want a flawless emerald to make an MV emitter, which we can get from sifting emerald ore, so a sifter hits the LV line and we get that running, and for some reason emerald doesn't spawn in the overworld, so I have to buy the ore. Aside from weird gemstone spawning, we're going to need some copper cables for these things, and copper can't be hand-wrapped with rubber sheets, so we need to melt the rubber down in the extractor and then use the liquid rubber and copper wires in an assembler to actually coat them. And finally, with copper cables, MV circuits, flawless emeralds, and aluminum, we can jam enough of those together to make a disk drive. After 8 days of labor, we have an applied energistic system. I'll turn the rest of our MV circuits into more 1K storage parts, netting us a total of 7 drives, which is more than enough to dump all of our chest contents into. And now that we've moved all of our items, we should move ourselves as well. The overworld is just too full of blocks for the reality of Gregtech expansion, so let's move into the void. By day 28, I'm prepped with enough resources to start a power generation plant in the Void world. So I collect the Void Cake from the quest book, and we head to a land of infinite capability. First up is to rebuild our sugarcane farm, which I do a little bit bigger this time around to support more power gen. And by day 29, I've got our all-new 2-boiler, 4-turbine setup running. Also, it seems like there's no daylight cycle in the Void world. The day value still increases normally, it's just that my job of tracking the day is a lot harder now, but that's okay because it's not like I'm doing a 100 days video or anything, so let's just keep up the move. And speaking of up, I fall down, and then up, and then die again. But at least falling in the Void here doesn't take all your stuff from you. And by day 31, we fully moved into the Void, but I can't shake that death off super easily, and I keep wondering, if only there was some way to fly. Oh, right, there is. Jetpacks. We'll need leather to make them, though. So I've got to find some cows to process into leather. Jetpacks are very expensive, and we've just ran out of iron and redstone again, so we'll need to go on another mining mission to locate them. Before heading off, I'd really like to make a better mining tool, an MV drill, which will mine a 3x3x3 area. We'll need an MV tier battery, which will require a canner machine to fill, but the LV machines are very cheap for us at this point, and it's very easy to give the drill an aluminum bit, which was stupid because it only mines at iron tier, so I replace it with a steel bit, right before realizing that I have no way of charging this device without an MV charger, so the first machine we're forced to make for medium voltage is a charger. Our only current Gregtech power line is at LV, which we can run MV machines at, it just sucks, but it will get the drill charged and we can hit the mines. I also made a magnet upgrade to suck up all the items we'll be creating with our new drill. We dig into day 33 and end up with boatloads of ore at our fingertips. And although I have a tier 1 jetpack, why not get a tier 2? I mean, sure, it's time consuming and costly to make, but who cares? Not me, and it definitely is faster than tier 1. But the tier 3 one only costs energetic alloy, and, we already need to craft a lot of that to make wires and stuff. We got the EBF and everything, so let's just do it. We're gonna need a lot of it, like I said, because it's the MV superconductor, so it actually very much is worth crafting a bunch of it now. And we only need to use a very small amount of it to get some new drip on our backs and speed in the air. Nice! This is going to make the Void World much more palatable to live in. It is finally time for us to push hard into MV, equipped with high-power smelters, copious multi-blocks, and more efficient circuit crafting, all set on a floating island paradise. And the pack only now considers us in the early game. So that's 10 real-life hours of Gregging, and we've just left the tutorial. Great. Anyways, for MV, we'll actually need a lot more of the cupronickel metals for the motors, and we'll need tons more of the copper cables, so best to make a few stacks of each. But again, we're out of copper, so we have to go searching for it once more. But instead of slowly charging my drill on the LV line, I make us an MV power converter to start an MV line and charge our drill at a reasonable rate. By this point, we've exhausted our old copper mine, but being able to fly is going to make finding a new one a whole lot easier, and being able to mine in a 3x3 radius makes extracting copper a whole lot easier. We also need a lot of nickel, which is pretty important for the cupronickel alloy, and I'll let you guess why. So I mined straight into day 36, stocking up on nickel ores. And now that we have copper and our alloys prepped, we'll still need a bunch of MV circuits, which means we need 2 bunches of LV circuits. So it's time to put our machines to work, crafting us LV circuit parts at reduced costs. We'll still need loads of resin, and I'm tired of running out, so I make a phytogenic insulator, and it sucks absolute balls. There is a Gregtech alternative for growing trees, but it's not cheap. In fact, it's a giant steel multi-block called the greenhouse, but having infinite logs and resin will honestly be worth it. Still, it takes me all the way to day 38 to make all the casings and parts required to build it, and I don't fully set it up with an aqueous accumulator because it doesn't need to be that fast, but it should still produce a nice stipend of resin for turning into rubber. And as if one detour from circuits wasn't enough, how about another one? Our power gen is lackluster for what we need by now, so I need to make some components from thermal to speed it up. We'll need electrical steel gears to make the components though, and it's time for us to majorly upgrade our crafting. The MV extruder is our next machine, and it has the power to extrude ingots directly into complex shapes like gears, pipes, and rotors for the lowest cost possible. With it, it is very easy for us to make a set of upgrade components and power our machines up, but we can go even further. We just need cobalt brass, which is really easy to make. And after alloying a new type of glass from lead and obsidian, we can make the tier 2 components, which pushes each of our power machines to 400 Fe per tick. It's not bad at all, but we'll need it to be a lot better later, but for now, it's good enough. Okay, now let's get into MV tech. Like an MV electrolyzer to make aluminum much easier to get. The MV electrolyzer can work with better materials than clay, like rubies, which will net us chromium dust, a very important reagent in alloys. And with aluminum in much better order, we should definitely get back to improving our circuit costs. Up until now, we've been making circuits from crude parts, but with an MV laser engraver and cutter, we can create silicon chips that will massively increase our crafting yields and unlock our next circuit theme. Of course, we're out of circuits and out of silver to make the boards needed for them, and so we should probably definitely move to the cheaper method of printing the phenolic boards. It's cheaper, but a lot more tedious. For starters, we need hydrochloric acid, so it's time for our first round of chemistry. We'll need chlorine and hydrogen is very easy because we can get it from water. Chlorine we can get from salt, so we take a salty mining trip and then split some rock salt into potassium and chlorine gas. And after mixing equal parts hydrogen and chlorine, we make hydrochloric acid, which as an acid can't be moved into our steel cells or bronze drums, so we're moving the highly deadly acid in a bucket. But if we combine that acid with iron, which the bucket definitely isn't made out of, it makes iron 3 chloride, which is a fluid that we can use to print circuit boards with just silver foil instead of wires, which is about half as costly. While our boards get printed, I begin the crafting of a monocrystalline silicon boule in our EBF, since the craft takes multiple real-life minutes to complete, and I want it to get started now. While that goes, we need a few machines. The cutter requires vanadium steel, which requires an MV mixer, so the mixer comes first. We'll also need vanadium to make vanadium steel, and that we can process out of vanadium magnetite ore. Side note, vanadium steel is our first alloy that we use chromium in. Woo! Other side note, it has to go into the EBF, which has thankfully just finished our silicon boule. We can't use the silicon boule until we have the cutter, and we can't make the cutter until we have the vanadium steel, so let's go make the laser engraver, which we can make, but we can't use until we have a ruby lens inside of it, and we can't make a ruby lens until we have the cutter to make ruby plates. So we need the cutter. After waiting a bit for our new alloy, we can shape it into a buzzsaw and make the cutter. Thank God. It slices our silicon boule into usable silicon wafers and a block of ruby into ruby plates. Then I need to make an MV lathe to shape those ruby plates into a ruby lens. The ruby lens and the silicon wafers make ILC wafers, which we can cut again into IC chips, our new circuit crafting resource. These bad boys will make circuit crafting a breeze, but while we're on the topic of reducing costs, we should talk about diodes. Right now, we can only make 2 diodes at once, but if we make a little liquid called polyethylene, we can make 4 of them at a time. How hard could that be? The answer is very. We need sulfuric acid to start. Sulfur and hydrogen make hydrogen sulfide, which we can turn directly into sulfuric acid. Well, as long as the crafting card in your chemical reactor is on 2. Mine wasn't, so I have to do a bunch of other steps to salvage the accident, but in the end, we get sulfuric acid. Next, we need some ethanol, and for that, we'll need some plant balls, and then to grind balls into biochaff and run that with some water through the pyrolyze oven, not for soggy chaff, but for some nice green biomass. This eventually converts into ethanol, but first we'll need an MV distillery, which forces us to make more circuits, MV pumps, and a spring. It is an oddly expensive device, but it does net us access to the lovely and intoxicating ethanol. And if you think we're done making annoying fluid machines yet, you're wrong, because we'll need another chemical reactor, but I don't remember those needing pumps. Damn it, I made a chemical bath. I always do that. Alright, fine. Wasted materials aside, I make a chemical reactor for real, and now we can react ethanol with sulfuric acid to make ethylene. I'm going to need as much of it as possible because I want plenty of polyethylene, and it takes a very long time to craft, so we're gonna go let that cook. In the meantime, we're running out of gallium arsenide for the diodes, and sphalerite still only comes from the nether, making gallium a real pain to gain. So it's probably time for me to unlock nether access. In order to get to the nether in this pack, you heard me right earlier, we need to bake a cake. And that first requires us to use nuclear technology to simulate mobs. So step 1 is mining uraninite ore, which I managed to find in God's most annoying position. It's just right under the ocean. Yay! Don't ever want to mine that again, so I'm processing it to double it. That's gonna take a long time, and the ethylene actually finished cooking in the time it took me to mine all this stuff, so let's polymerize it. All we have to do is react it with oxygen, and we get polyethylene, which is plastic, if you didn't know that. And as exciting as plastic is, what's even more exciting is I realized that golden drums can move acid around, so I don't have to use buckets anymore. Woo! With cheaper diodes and better acid maneuvering, I don't really want to wait for the nether access, and our uraninite is still going, so I'm just gonna buy another round of sphalerite. It's not really gonna be enough, but it'll get us some more diodes at least. We're out of arsenic as well, so we need to hit up the mines again, but this time I go ahead and upgrade our backpack to the 9s, adding way more slots, and making those slots able to hold 2 stacks of items each. By day 45, I've excavated some more rubies and realgar, and we're ready for more processing, especially since the uraninite is finished, so we can get that smelting into pulsating dust, an integral part of the hostile neural networks progression. Yes, hostile neural networks is here, and it is the key to the nether and powers that some would consider unnatural. First off though, we need to combine the pulsating dust with carbon fibers. Those we can make by extracting carbon from diamonds and alloying that with some string to make carbon fiber, which will alloy again with pulsating dust to make pulsating fibers. And I need some obsidian, so it's time to hit up the mines. All those nice new tasty things combine into something called a simulation chamber, a machine capable of digitally simulating mobs to synthesize special resources. But to actually get mob data, I'll need a mob part, like this rotten piece of flesh I found laying around in someone's apartment. Combining that and a data thingy gives us a zombie data card that we can slot into the simulation chamber, but it won't run until it has both power and a fuel called pulsating prediction matrices. They are really easy to get though, we just need to alloy clay blocks and pulsating dust. When fueled to the prediction matrices and power, the zombie data module will begin to simulate, producing something called overworld matter, and a small chance of a little prediction palette that is not going to be useful until later on. The overworld matter, however, can be transmuted into hellish matter, which we can also use to turn sand into soul sand, which is going to be the base of our nether cake. And then for our next trick, we're going to take a break from alien technology to bake a cake, just a regular cake. Eggs, wheat, sugar, and then we imbue it with the powers of hell
in order to open a pastry portal to the other side.
But this pack is a peaceful mode pack, so the other side actually isn't too scary. I'm able to locate a very juicy and succulent vein of sphalerite to secure our gallium supplies, hopefully for the rest of this video. And with great gallium comes more diodes. Finally. circuitry advancement. We now have the diodes needed to craft the first of the integrated circuits. Even though they're just at LV, they craft 2 at a time, and even better than that, 2 of the LV integrated circuits makes 2 of the MV integrated circuits, meaning finally we have 1-to-1 MV circuit crafting. Now, those will take a bit to craft, especially because we have to wait on the LV circuits first, and we really should start working on our hostile neural network system, so I moved to make a GAST module, really useful down the line. We'll want a GAST here, and that forces us to craft all these weird items and gather things like apples and red mushrooms, but after enough running around in alchemy, we score our prize. We'll still need a supply of the prediction matrices, and we're out of clay, so I can make some out of dirt. Yeah, we can turn dirt into mud inside of a mixer, and then use a compressor to mush it into clay blocks. Oh, and hey, our LV circuits are actually done crafting pretty fast, so we can almost start the MV circuit craft. It's just that we're out of phenolic circuit boards, polyethylene, and silver, which is like 80% of a circuit, so I have to spend the rest of day 49 gathering and synthesizing resources. On day 50, the halfway point of our challenge, we're running out of power again. Which is weird because we actually should have plenty for now. I mean, the only new thing I added was the gas module. How expensive could that be to... Whoa! Okay, alright, yep, we're pulling the plug on the gas for now. And you know what, just for good measure, I'm gonna beef up the steam pipes to make sure they have enough throughput. Also, our plastic and circuit board crafting is finished just about now, so we can go back to crafting the MV circuits. And if it seems like I'm running around a lot, I am. This is Gregtech. But finally, after long last, the Tier 2 MV circuits. I know that the polyethylene side quest made it look like they take a lot longer to make, but I swear doing that first is going to make the rest of the game a lot easier. We're now low on circuit board etching fluid, so we can easily make some more iron 3 chloride by mixing rock salt dust and water to make hydrochloric acid, and combine that with iron dust to make the etching fluid. We should also look forward towards high voltage technology and make some stainless steel, as we're going to want a lot of that for HV. And we're running low on aluminum, and while we're making a shopping list, an MV assembler would be divine because stainless steel needs HV power to smelt. And we also need an MV assembler to make the 2 required MV energy hatches. But first we're running out of power again, so I need to jam more steam into the mixture. Okay. We also need to upgrade our energy conduits to the vibrant alloy tier so they can carry our increased power output, and thankfully we looted 4 ingots of the stuff so we don't have to mix and smelt it right now. That is avoiding some pain. The actual upgrade process of our power supply takes me into day 52, but with more power comes better electric blast furnaces. But right, we need the new MV energy hatches for them, and they require circuit chips that we can't engrave until I get my hands on some more sapphires, so I have to run to the mines to collect those, putting everything else on pause, and by day 53, I can unpause everything else because I can make a block of sapphire, cut it into sheets, and lay those sheets into pretty blue lines. That gets us the new ULPIC silicon chips needed for the MV energy hatch, and in fact, actually, all future energy hatches are going to need some kind of silicon chip to craft, so keep that in mind. With the new MV hatches, our second EBF is ready to go, boasting lovely high voltage power capabilities. And it's good that we're doing this early on because stainless steel takes an annoyingly long time to smelt and uses a ton of power. In fact, so much power that it, well, I can't run it right now. For now, all I really want to do is make more upgrade components, but we're getting really close to needing a big overhaul to the way that we generate our FE, since even with the component boost, I still can't run the EBF. So the stainless steel has to wait, at the very least, until I can add more turbines to the list, and honestly, I would rather huff some chlorine gas than have to craft another dynamo without the AE crafting terminal, so I should probably do that. With our supply of MV circuits, it actually should be easy. A lot easier than huffing chlorine. We can craft up an inscriber for applied energistics, which is used to make advanced parts for our storage, like the calculation processor, which is the gateway to a crafting terminal. But as applied energistics processors go, we need to find meteors in the overworld in order to loot the required pattern presses. Thankfully though, a meteor compass is really cheap to make, and our meteor hunting adventure takes a very short amount of time. With all 4 of the press patterns in hand, we're also going to need some more Certus quartz, and now that we have full nether access, that's not going to be a problem whatsoever, and all we gotta do is gather up some nice pretty ore. After a quick inscriber usage, we can very easily make our crafting terminal and finally be free of needing to pull items out of our system ever again, because now our system is the crafting table. That gives us the speed kick we need to add a ton more power generators to our line. But steam is becoming old news, and the new news is something beefier, like diamonds. But farming diamonds in order to burn them is a big project, and it is going to take a ton of setup with hostile neural networks. And first even, we'll need more vibrant alloy, which we can make by mixing ender pearls and energetic alloy. The hostile neural networks module that will let us farm diamonds is the shulker data module, and to craft it, we need to convert our hellish data into end data with ender pearls, which we can thankfully craft by alloying diamonds and pulsating dust. We're going to want to get the shulker module trained by yesterday, as its rate of self-awareness affects how fast it can make diamonds for us. The more self-aware a module is, the more pristine predictions it makes, and pristine predictions are converted into loot inside of a loot fabricator, and shulker pristines make diamonds. We also can't forget that in addition to power, we need prediction matrices to fuel the simulation chamber, and for that, we need infinite pulsating dust and clay. Uraninite ore isn't something that we can farm, but we can make something called a resonant clathrate, and those puppies can be smelted into pulsating dust. But boy, oh boy, is it a beefy processing line. Weirdly enough, though, it's mostly rooted in cobblestone. And we are going to also need buckets of ender pearls. So we'll want an Enderman data module to fuel the production of the Enderman data module to fuel the production of all the other data modules. Worse than all that is that Enderman data modules cost even more than the ghast modules, so I need to upgrade our power supply again. But let's circle back to the cobblestone. Most of this will rely on cobblestone processing, so we'll want to get our hands on an igneous extruder and forge hammers. The extruder will infinitely produce cobblestone as long as water and lava are adjacent to it, and even better than that is components will make it produce more. Then, with the forge hammers, we can crush the cobble into gravel and then sand and then dust, and dust makes clay, and clay is half the cost of a prediction matrix, but also has an immediate benefit to us. A slight detour from the current grind, I want to do a different form of grinding as I grind the clay into dust and process it for an infinite supply of aluminum, silicon, lithium, and sodium. We're about to create our very first passive farm on day 56 of an automation pack. She passive on my Greg till I... She machine on my tech till I... She Greg on my tech till I passive?
She Greg on my tech till I helical fusion reactor.
Well, I lied. Actually, it's not day 56 that we make the passive farm on because we ran out of aluminum to make all the machine casings we need. And if we're doing our cobbleworks, we're doing it right, and we're doing it at MV. So before we can farm the clay, we have to get clay. But, you know, that's fine. I don't care. I'm not upset. And it takes all the way until day 57 to be ready for construction. First, of course, is a fresh converter, because I want this thing to be on its own power line. And henceforth begins the great wall of cobblestone processing. Prepare thine eyes for the eyesore of progress. Down goes an igneous extruder to make cobblestone, and then a chain of 3 forge hammers to process the cobble all the way into dust. The dust gets pushed into a chemical reactor with water to make clay, and the clay gets pushed into a macerator to make the clay dust that will electrolyze into our beautiful resources. And to store them, I'll use a drawer network. You guys are going to be seeing a lot more of these coming up as they're very, very convenient, allowing you to remotely connect drawers to one storage spot, as well as connecting applied energistics to that storage controller. But finally, we have our first passive machine, and I was so excited that I nearly threw myself off the island. But the hive industry cannot last for long as we're still low on power, so guess what I get to do again? More power generation. And boy, did I beat my head against a wall for this one, as it takes me all the way through day 60 to finally put an end to our various power supply issues. And by finally, I mean for the time being. With more power, though, comes better electric blast furnaces, of course, so I'd like to chase down a better tier MV converter so that we can supply enough power to actually run our machines and the HV EBF at the same time, which actually isn't too hard to craft at all. What is hard is accepting the fact that after even 2 days of working on it, the steam power just still isn't enough, and the EBF still takes all my power. I mean, it's kind of enough. Like, the power fluctuates. Yeah, we gotta do this farm. If we want to pursue a diamond burning setup, though, we're very much going to need our cobbleworks to be finished, and the current design needs a slight reorganization. With our machines moved around, we should have enough space to fit the new module into the cobbleworks, because we need to start producing quartz, and for that, we need glass, and for that, we need sand, and for that, we need forge hammers. So, down goes an electric furnace to smelt sand into glass, which will then electrolyze into quartz, and then an extractor is prepared for our eventual ender pearl supply, and then the extracted ender pearls and the quartz go into a chemical reactor to create the resonant clathrates, which are then smelted in a furnace for pulsating dust, which then gets sent into an alloy smelter with the clay for pulsating prediction matrices. And I just ran out of gold. That blows, because we kind of need it to power all of our MB machines. So it's back to the mines again. But I think we all deserve a break from mining and crafting and mining and crafting. So, I guess we'll just craft something else than we've been crafting previously? Look, Papa wants a new drill, okay? An HV drill mines in a 5x5x5 area, which is so nice. I'll want a stainless steel drill bit, and of course the HV power unit, so we're gonna want a good handful of stainless steel parts like small gears, plates, and screws. We'll even want the first of our HV electric motors, which we're already able to craft. And of course, an HV battery is needed, which requires that polyethylene I made earlier. We'll need an HV charger to power this thing, so let's push this side quest a little bit further and make the first of our HV circuits. We'll want RAM chips, and those require a nice emerald lens, which is easy for us to make, but they also take transistors, which require silicon ingots. Silicon ingots require Canthal coils to be smelted, which are one tier above cupronickel coils, so we need to obtain those before we can make the HV circuits. This side quest is very quickly becoming a main quest, but, well, Canthal's an easy mix. It's just iron, chromium, and aluminum, which we all have plenty of, but man does it take forever to smelt, and they require our HV EBF. We can speed things up with nitrogen gas, though, and that's actually easy for us to make since it kind of is everywhere in the air all around us all the time. We can gather up some air in a gas collector and then process it using a centrifuge to extract both nitrogen and oxygen. The oxygen we don't need, but the nitrogen we can pump into our EBF, and with Crafting Card 2, it'll use the faster nitro-boosted recipes. And after all of that, it'll take an hour to smelt the 2 stacks of Canthal. Damn. Okay. Side quest failed. We're going to be using our MV drill, but you know what? That really wasn't a side quest. It was a main quest, so side quest failed successfully. Well, back to looking for gold, and with fight and or omnipotence, it really doesn't take too long. With energetic alloy smelting again thanks to our new gold supply, we're ready to return to the cobbleworks, but not before our machines begin to be pushed to the edge of their power supply again, so more power for the power god, more cables for the cable throne. Even better, our cobbleworks is, well, not cobble working very well. The electric furnace we use for smelting the glass, it just isn't fast enough. I mean, it's really slow, and it only smelts 1 piece of glass at a time. We can use an arc furnace, which is 5 times faster, and smelts 2 at a time, making it 10 times faster, with the only drawback of needing oxygen gas to run. It won't be too hard to get oxygen, actually, as we can use the water byproduct of the clay electrolysis to split it into hydrogen and oxygen. We'll trash the hydrogen and push the oxygen into the arc furnace, and problem solved! Glass is flowing. And that means we have everything we need for infinite hostile neural networks, except for ender pearls. And of course that means we need to use hostile neural networks for ender pearls, so we need to do some numbers here to know exactly how many simulation chambers that we can run. Each sim chamber takes 15 seconds to run, and with a constant supply of ender pearls, we'll be making 4 prediction matrices every 6 seconds. And those numbers work out nicely to about 8 simulation chambers running at once, which actually isn't that bad. It should be way more than enough. To manage all of our items for our cobbleworks, we're going to use applied energistics. So sending the ender pearls and accessing all the prediction matrices is going to be handled in our ME system. But to do that, we're going to need more advanced AE parts than we have, even more advanced than our calculation processors. So we'll need some more fluics, and I make a quick and dirty Certus quartz charging station to help us with that, and fun fact, it's more efficient to make fluics inside of a mixer instead of the in-world recipe, so I make sure to take the full benefit of that. Using the fluics and our calculation processors, we can make formation and annihilation cores, which can be used to make the ME interface. I also make an extra one. At the moment, though, they're pretty expensive, but they are going to be the cornerstone of our factory, as we can use them to expose items and fluids in the ME system to the outside world, and also to receive items and fluids from the outside world into the ME system. Even more expensive, though, is a storage interface, since it actually uses the interface and an MV piston as well as a motor. But storage interfaces are extremely important, as they allow us to store things outside of the ME network inside of the ME network. So we don't fill up our data disks, but still have access to them. All I have to do is connect it to the storage that I want, seen by the network, which is made even more powerful by storage controllers, which can connect to many, many drawers at once. I use that extra interface I made to place above the extractor and constantly stock ender pearls, and then I can use the extractor and a machine cover to pull the ender pearls out and melt them down into resonant ender, just like we need. Now all we gotta do is actually get the ender pearls, and that means it's time to run the Enderman module. So, I mean, might as well add more power. And with more power, I feel a lot more comfortable actually accommodating our HNN setup, which we're actually going to want a lot more space for. So that was a good time for me to remember that building gadgets are on this mod pack, making island expansion much faster. Also, Canthal update, it's done, but we're long past our HV drill tangent, so I'm going to stay focused on HNN. So I craft another loop fabricator so that each of our simulation chambers has one for themselves. And we'll want an interface so that we have access to our AE network, of course. The interface will stock pulsating prediction matrices, and we'll use Ender.io item conduits to move them around between the various simulation chambers. The simulation chambers will allow output to the same line of Ender.io conduits, which will connect to the loot fabricators with filtered inserts so that each loot fab only gets one type of pristine prediction. Side note, it was bugged, it didn't work, but it didn't break the machine, so when? You also might be wondering where all the extraterrestrial data we'll be making needs to go, and, well, we have a storage controller hooked up to a bunch of drawers. The drawers are going to go and store all of our H&N outputs like our diamonds, ender pearls, and our data. And with a void module on the data drawer, it'll never overflow. But before I can hook everything up to AE, I need to wait on some more crafts, so let's turn back to our Canthal project. We can mash together Canthal wires, aluminum foil, and copper juice to make our tasty Canthal coils. Nice. And while the new coils bake in the assembler, our storage interface is ready to go, so we're hooked up to AE. It is time for the numismatic dynamo, a dynamo that burns diamonds. We need some vibrant alloy, and hey, the coil's just finished, so we can smelt the vibrant alloy ingots at a Canthal EBF. The numismatic dynamo is just like a more expensive steam dynamo, needing higher tier furnaces and vibrant alloy parts, but once it's done, we can automatically push our infinite diamonds into it, and man, it makes 2.5 thousand FE per tick by default. That is with 0 upgrades. After jamming components into it, we're creating more than 6,000 FE per tick from one single dynamo, and all we have to do is just let the diamonds roll in passively. One day we're going to have a cleaner looking system than all of this, but for our first 100 days, this is cooking. And now, I've been a good boy, and good boys deserve new drills. With Canthal coils, we've got silicon ingots, and with silicon ingots and polyethylene, we've got transistors, and transistors are the final missing piece to high voltage circuitry. So it's time to gather all the bolts, wires, bits, and chips needed to craft the first of our high voltage beauties. Finally, a new breakthrough in technology, and better yet, a new drill. The first HV tech we taste is the glorious HV charger and converter, and just like that, our drill is charged. It is almost time for an extremely self-indulgent mining spree, but first we should buff our power generation a bit by adding efficiency modules to our numismatic dynamo to actually reduce how many diamonds it needs to consume. And now, we're free to spree. Good God, look at that mining range, baby. Even better if I get it enchanted. Yeah, that's right. We can make enchantments with Ender.io, and ooh boy, is this drill going to be so cool. We'll want to make the Ender.io enchanter, which needs materials only craftable inside of an atomic reconstruction machine. The reconstructor is a weird machine that basically just turns one item into another item, and we can use it to make the book and quills we'll need to create the enchanting books, and we can turn coal into void crystals needed to actually craft the enchanter. Then all we have to do is make a simple efficiency 5 and unbreaking 3 book, and there we go, maximum speed. But before we can have any fun, our AE storage fills right up, so I have to add another disk drive, but we're also kind of out of circuit crafting materials, so instead I just make the cheaper ME chest, which can only store 1 storage disk, but 1 is technically all we need right now. We're gonna need more circuits though to fix our storage problems, and thankfully, the drill can help. There's a metal called tantalum that we can use for ultra cheap circuit crafting, and it can only be mined in the nether. And mining it sucks. It is so close to the lava, it is so rare, and just I don't like it at all. I brewed fire immunity potions just so I wouldn't die trying to extract it, but it still kept falling into the lava. Why is it immune to lava if it's in the nether? I mined all the way to day 73 and gathered less than a stack of tantalite, which by the way, is not tantalum. We still have to process that. It's gonna take a long time, and in the meanwhile, my drill thirsts for some platinum, another metal that is going to be integral to making our circuits much, much cheaper. And platinum, naturally, only spawns in the end dimension, so we have to bake another special cake. And for whatever reason, we'll need black steel for it, which is just really, really annoying to make. It needs coal coke, void crystal, steel dust, and black bronze, which is itself an alloy of copper and gold. And as an insult to injury, when black steel is smelted in the EBF, it comes out blazing hot and completely unusable, so we'll have to cool it. We'll need to distill water in a distillery to make distilled water and put that inside of a chemical bath. Then we can dip the hot ingots inside of the bath and they become nice and cool. Later on, we'll have to deal with many, many hot ingots and more complicated cooling procedures, but for now, it's just this. And now we can bake a cake out of metal and eyeballs. So, yay, end dimension!
Why are you blue?
Unsurprisingly, it's extremely empty, but it's got just the ores we're looking for. And on top of being a tasty hotspot for platinum and palladium, we'll also find loads of chromite, iron, and gold. And with a fat stash of ores, I think we're finally ready for the big push into HV tech after all this time. We're going to be using a lot more power here though, so I'll want to boost our Ender IO conduits to support the increased power demands of the base. The End Steel tier conduits are next up, and they take End Steel. We can use black steel, vibrant alloy, and end stone to alloy it together. It isn't too bad of an alloy to get our hands on, but it does come out hot and requires an HV chemical bath in order to cool it, so I guess MV tier water just isn't good enough. And it takes me until day 76 to craft up the new chemical bath. HV is really expensive for us right now. And breaking news! We need more power! So another dynamo hits the line. More power fluctuations at 9. I also may as well tear down the old power generation system, and only as I write this script do I realize I never took the upgrade components out of the steam dynamos to repurpose into other machines, which is just brilliant of me. We're also very, very, very much out of space in the ME system, so we'll want more MV circuits in order to make another tasty disk drive. We are very low on resources right now, but I do have just enough to squeak out enough circuits for a new disk drive and some more disks to keep the storage going strong. We definitely need to make more iron 3 chloride to etch more boards, but we should also get an MV circuit assembler too, as it will help with the circuit tiers, and we probably want an HV assembler to unlock even more circuit parts, and of course we still have to automate plastic. This part of the game has so many choices, so many to do, and yet there's still only one right choice. Cheaper circuits. That's always the right choice. First up, a small convenience is that we can add a fluid storage cell to our ME system so that we can now store fluids in it as well as items. Now, the MV circuit assembler we can already make, but it takes me until day 78 to cram together enough parts for the high voltage regular assembler. Jesus, they're so expensive. But together, they're going to make our circuits very cheap. We're still going to want more polyethylene if we're going to continue though, so it's back to balls, chaff, mass, ethanol, ethylene, but before spending all of our ethylene on polyethylene, I combine some of it with chlorine to make vinyl chloride, which we can then turn into polyvinyl chloride, or PVC, which will be an extremely useful component for circuits. And I should say what we're actually doing here. We're after the SMD components, ultra cheap versions of resistors, transistors, capacitors, inductors, and diodes, and are basically all but necessary for circuit crafting going forwards. The best versions of them cost tantalum parts, which is why we went mining for the stupid thing earlier, and all of them require polyethylene and a high voltage assembler. So now is the time to process our tantalite to get tantalum. And I think the most efficient processing line for us right now is the thermal centrifuge. In order to get the random byproducts of ores though, we need HV tier machines, so we're kind of at an impasse of needing more HV circuits to make more HV machines and wanting more HV machines to make better HV circuits, so we just have to go back to making inefficient circuits, and also I just ran out of silver, so thank God for the Omega drill, I guess. Actually, wow, thank God for the Omega drill. It's so fast that I can actually make both of our macerator and thermal centrifuge before day 80 rolls over, and that allows us to process tantalum finally. And as day 80 rolls around, our tantalum products are ready for SMDs. We'll also need some PVC foil as well. And my God, are SMD components nice. What makes them so cheap, you wonder? Well, most of them you make 32 of at once. 32 items from a single craft is ridiculous. Our biggest crafting limit is of course the tantalum, but even then it actually doesn't take that much to make them. In fact, our supply is going to last us for the next 20 days. And hey, PVC is also useful outside of crafting SMDs, as we can combine the sheets with sulfuric acid to make blank plastic circuit boards, which are needed for the tier 3 circuits. But I'm pretty sure we're low on circuit chips, so we need to make a bunch more of those, and to make the better tier LV, MV, and HV circuits, we'll also need a new silicon chip, the CPU, which takes a shiny diamond lens, which is actually really easy for us to make right now. All that being said, there are still better silicon wafers and chips out there that require a clean room to make, and we're going to want that very soon. The clean room's made out of plasticrete blocks, which takes lots of plastic, steel, and concrete. Concrete's actually really easy to make, it's just stone and water, but plastic and steel is going to be very annoying. In fact, we don't nearly have the plastic that we need. I should really passive it at MV and then upgrade it to HV later, but in for a penny, in for a pound, I'm doing this by hand. And don't forget, the entire time in the background, I'm crafting our new cheaper circuits, and by day 82, we've got our hands on our new HV circuitry, and are closing in on that sweet, sweet clean room. Just one William more plastic sheets to create. To that end, I make a HV chemical reactor to speed up the ethylene process, since it's the slowest part of polyethylene by quite a lot. And while we wait for crafts to move, we should prepare for higher tier circuit wafers that require an HV engraver and cutter. For the laser engraver, we'll want an HV emitter, which takes an eye of ender and some chromium rods, and for the cutter, we'll also need to make a bit more end steel for the end steel gear, which can then be lathed into an end steel buzzsaw. And now, once we have the clean room, we'll have all the machines we need to use it. We still need one William plastic though, so I guess while I wait for that, I can make clean room filters? I mean, they're the most pricey part of a clean room, and they kind of determine how big it's going to be. So, the next 2 days are spent entirely on clean room construction, making all the parts and cobbling them all together into one beautiful white box of clean. It does need a maintenance hatch, power to actually clean itself, and a machine hole so that power can pass through from the outside. But in the end, it's not too bad. And I think we finally now can work with our better wafers. No, not yet. We need phosphorus. We can mine monazite ore in the nether to process into phosphorus eventually, but I can also just buy tricalcium phosphate to just extract the phosphorus from immediately. And speaking of buying things with our Moni currency, I haven't been accepting our quest rewards for a while now. I wonder how much money we're making. I guess we could check at the end of 100 days. Well, you'll just have to wait and see, because phosphorus is here and ready to be smelted into a phosphorus-doped monocrystalline silicon boule, a much better tier of boule. But just as it takes longer to say, it takes longer to smelt than the regular silicon boules. So in the meantime, I craft up some more circuit boards, which we now have plenty of resources to do so with. Once the phosphorus boule is done, we can cut it in the HV cutter inside of our clean room, and it makes a lovely 32 wafers instead of just 16. And even better, phosphorus wafers make 4 times the amount of engraved wafers of any engraved wafer type that only requires basic silicon, so we've gone and quadrupled our chip supply in an instant. Finally, we've mastered circuit crafting, and now I think it's finally time that we master plastic. Can an endless void be full of microplastics? We're about to find out. First, I need a supply of sulfur and chlorine, and both of those come from HNN. We'll want to boost our power supply as well before adding some new modules though. We don't want to burn out our diamond supply just yet. So more shulker simulation chambers and dynamos hit the towers. I mean, the processing line. The processing line. With even more power, I send the gas module off to the races to make us gas tiers, and I create a blaze module which can directly make sulfur for us. Nice. To make the machines to make polyethylene, I need a bit more polyethylene, so the next few days are spent prepping plastic. Lots of plastic and crafting machines. But at the end of it, I've got a framework down for our sulfuric acid line, but we can't do anything with it until we make the chlorine and hydrogen line, which makes you wonder why I started with the sulfuric acid line. But we're gonna need a big supply of water in our applied energistic system, something that won't be an issue for too long, but for the rest of these 100 days, it'll just be nice to store some in a drum. We can now pipe the water and the gas tiers into a chemical reactor to make salt water, as well as some byproduct that will store in some drawers. The salt water is then electrolyzed into chlorine and hydrogen, as well as sodium hydroxide dust that we're gonna store for later, as it's really useful. And now that we have the hydrogen supply, we can make hydrogen sulfide for sulfuric acid. Well, that's what I would say if I could actually afford to make the storage bus to connect the hydrogen to the AE network. So for now, we're just having to wait because we're also out of aluminum. So for fun, let's just make a crazy power boosted EBF to smelt aluminum really, really fast. We'll need HV energy hatches, which require a new type of silicon chip that requires a more complicated lens to engrave. Indeed, the orange lens is much harder to make than the others. First off, we'll need to fuse glass dust into panes inside of an alloy smelter, and then mill those panes into a clear glass lens. We actually need vanilla orange dye, which sends me to the overworld for a flower picking moment before returning to the base and bathing that dye in salt and sulfuric acid to produce a liquid chemical dye. And that special orange dye can be used in a chemical bath with the clear lens to make an orange lens capable of engraving our LPIC wafers. Those get cut like normal into chips, and now we have them for the HV hatches, but we still need one more new thing. Combining sodium and potassium makes sodium potassium. But it's a fluid! And I'll also want to make some fine black steel wire for high voltage coils, and combining all those parts with a machine hole and some gold cable gets us an HV energy hatch. Woohoo! Multi-blocks at an increased speed. So up goes our next EBF with 2 HV hatches, running it at extreme voltage. We won't be getting past EV today, but we're about to taste a little bit of its sweetness. Aluminum now only takes 5 seconds to smelt down, and with nitrogen boosting, it's even faster. So we're gonna have these blue boys in no time. In fact, we can now easily afford the storage buses that we want to continue our processing lines. So hydrogen gets loaded into the ME system, and we're ready to make that sweet, sweet hydrogen sulfide. But not sulfuric acid, because we're still missing oxygen automation which we absolutely need for sulfuric acid. But before that, we should honestly get better fluid storage systems, as drums don't store that much and they don't have a voiding feature either. Instead, I want a super tank. Super tanks store millions of millibuckets of fluids and can be locked to one fluid type and even have voiding enabled. And if we're chasing oxygen, then there's the easy way to make it that isn't very good, and the way that definitely would take longer than 7 days, so the bad way it is. All we need is an HV gas extractor with 4 HV centrifuges all around it, spinning the air down into loads of nitrogen and a very small amount of oxygen. But the key here is that it does make oxygen. Is it enough oxygen? No. But, it's still oxygen. So with good enough oxygen squared away, we can finally get our sulfuric acid passived on up. We won't need that much of it, and I don't want it to run forever, so a drum is more than enough space to store it. So now, finally, we can passive polyethylene and polyvinyl chloride, right after I fix the pipes that I dissolved by running acid through them. Okay, finally, the mad dash of machines can begin. We need chemical reactors, a distillery, macerator, pyrolyze oven, and a compressor. The chemical reactors will run at HV, but all the other stuff will work fine at MV tier. I'll also want to hook up our sugarcane drawer into the ME network, which is very easy to do because of the storage controllers. And now it's time for our machines to hit the floor. First, I set up the whole line for compressing sugarcane, macerating the plant balls, and then sending that biochaff into the pyrolyze oven with water to turn it into biomass. The biomass goes into the distillery to make the tasty but bad for your liver ethanol, and that moseys on over to a chemical reactor with some sulfuric acid for ethylene. We'll want to split our ethylene across both polyethylene production and PVC production, so we'll want to use a Gregtech pipe network connecting all the machines together, and it'll round robin the fluid for us. And that should be most of the polyethylene machine done. It just needs to be hooked up to ME and powered. The ME hookup isn't hard at all. Sugarcane goes into the compressor, sulfuric acid into the ethanol reactor, oxygen into the polyethylene reactor, chlorine into the vinyl chloride reactor, and oxygen again into the polyvinyl chloride reactor. And by the time I'm done with the ME hookups, it's ready to be powered. Here's to hoping it all works. And by golly gosh, it does. It might not be the fastest thing in the world, but man, does it feel good to have PE and PVC fully automated for the first time. The only addition I need to make is adding an electrolyzer to reprocess a hydrochloric acid byproduct back into chlorine and hydrogen. For now, I'll just store the polyethylene as a fluid, since that's how it's mostly useful, but the PVC is only really useful as sheets, at least for a long while, so into a fluid solidifier it goes, and out comes the solid sheets that I store a stack of in a downgraded drawer. And wow, we're nearly done with our massive adventure. With infinite plastic and PVC, all of my goals for this 100 days have been met, but that doesn't mean we're out of things to do around the base. Power is fluctuating again, and if you guys want another 100 days, I certainly don't want to come back to a powerless base. So let's add 2 more dynamos to the line, pushing our power to the maximum that our conduits can handle. Nearly 32,000 FE per tick, which is a lot. With power done, we can actually passive sodium persulfate, a circuit board printing fluid, since we're making the sodium hydroxide from chlorine processing. Sodium hydroxide gets reacted with sulfuric acid for sodium bisulfate, which we then electrolyze for sodium persulfate, and even some hydrogen. And come day 99, I want to use this last day shoring up on resources, like chromium dust, which we can extract from our chromite ore. And hey, it's day 99, so we may as well do it fancy. We're going to have to smelt the chromite first, and let's pull out the big guns. I'll need some more HV circuits though, so we're going to need to make more SMDs, which is very easy to do now that we have unlimited plastic. And super quickly, we can make the multi-smelter. It's like a little mini blast furnace, and acts as either a furnace or alloy smelter that performs loads of recipes at once based on the tier of coil we provide it. But for right now, cupronickel coils and LV power is more than enough, because it can smelt 32 items at once. And that allows us to extract the chromium from our smelted chromite. And just in time as well, because I make it to the overworld at just the perfect moment to catch the day 100 sunrise. What an adventure. Sure, our base is messy, but, you know, maybe another 100 days and I can get it all cleaned up. As promised, though, let's see how much money we ended up with. Ooh, wow, okay, that is some stonks. Well, I really hope you enjoyed these last 100 days, and make sure to let me know if you want another 200 days. 200 days can only happen with your support. Thanks for watching.